Hello everybody and welcome to the UCT Travel virtual festive flower demonstration with Katherine Kear. Katherine is a national NAFAS demonstrator and has just become NAFAS National Chair. Welcome Katherine, and you're going to do three, I think, festive displays for us. So take it away.
Thank you very much, Charlotte, for your lovely introduction. We've got one candle lit on the Advent wreath and we're starting to think about Christmas decorations. Starting with something that's a little bit fun. You've got to work on the ingredients for that. The base of it could be an old tin lid. It could be a piece of planking or even one of the double brick trays that we have. It doesn't really matter. You could also use a circular container, your choice. The twigs are going to be impaled upon very, very small pin holders. So that's a little bit of preparation. The pin holders are going to be hidden by moss. I'm lucky that I have plenty of moss in the garden. I've tried to use all mechanics that you're going to be able to find around the house. Maybe if you like Christmas tree baubles, then something like that could be used. And we're going for environmentally friendly here. The containers are going to be bottles. Now, please don't judge me by the amount of alcoholic bottles used in this design. I can assure you that I haven't drunk all of them, although I have some of them. They can be as small or as big as you want the design to be, and you can obviously buy little festive bottles. You can buy decorative bottles online. So the idea is that you start with your tray, you impale your twigs onto the pin holders, and remember to cut your twig stems horizontally, not on the slant. They sit better on the pin holders. And when you've got as many groupings of twigs as you want, you cover everything in moss. Now, in all wonderful demonstrations, this is where I now remove the bits and pieces and say, here's one I prepared earlier. Because this is a little bit time consuming, I've already prepared the twigs, and then I've placed the bottles amongst the moss. The moss holds the bottles in place. As you can see, mine is front facing, but you could actually have yours as being viewed all the way around. And I've started putting into the bottles a selection of Lysianthus, roses and gypsophila. And again, I've been to the supermarket for those. I work best from one side to the other, but it's entirely up to you which you work. The idea is that there's a certain amount of transparency to this design. So if you were to do a front-facing design, you can look through. If this is an all the way round design, again, you need to be able to look through. If you're seated on a table with somebody the other side, it's nice to see them through the twiggery. But the transparency of the design is very, very important. So at the moment, on the last four bottles here, on this side, I'm adding my materials. And we're using a technique called gradation. This is where each flower, each twig, each little bit of foliage, I've got rosemary here, has its own level. So the eye comes down through. The smaller items, the tighter items are to the top. The larger items, the bigger, more mature flowers are to the base of the design. And because you've got the moss at the base, it gives a lovely verdant feel to the design. With the roses, remove some of the foliage. Don't remove all the foliage because the foliage is going to act as the pump to take the water up through the stems. But sometimes rose foliage goes off very, very quickly. So you actually want a design that looks good all the way through. I'm making sure that some of the flowers are tucked behind the twigs. Again, there is a lovely transparency, a type of veiling to the design. And what we're trying to replicate here is maybe a garden border, a winter garden border with this as much sparkle as you can get. Obviously, because these are miniature designs, then the bottle aperture is much smaller. So choose your flowers with care. I'm going to put in some little sprigs of rosemary. Hopefully in the warmth of a room, the perfume of the rosemary will come out. But it also fits with the lovely colour scheme we've got. It also adds a certain texture to the design. And with some of the material, add it looking towards the back of the design so that your design has a little bit of depth. The gold twigs, we maybe want to think about integrating the gold lower down into the design. And this was where a few Christmas tree baubles come in handy. You could hang them on the twigs, but that again changes the visual balance of the design. So what I'm going to do is just lie a couple of the baubles down onto the moss. If you wanted to make this design a little bit interactive, and sometimes it's rather nice to involve your audience or your guests in the design, why not find some chocolates wrapped up in gold foil? Those lovely round ones that I can't remember the name of, but those would look rather nice, actually tucked in. Don't forget to cut off the little hangers that you get on the Christmas tree baubles. It's all about attention to detail. So it's a rather nice, quick, easy to produce Christmas tree design that starts with a little bit of festive sparkle, and that completes that first design. So I'm just going to move the items from that, and then we'll move on to our second design. And we'll just put that there to the side. So our second design is actually linked to the wreath that we have on the wall. And again, I've gone for ingredients that you've got around the house. I am aware that people can't go out, and it's rather nice to find something that you've got. And there's also something very, very satisfying about using what you've got. It's not about going out and buying the most perfect item. It's about going out, finding what you've got, and being very creative with it. Inspiration comes from many sources, but we all have inspiration within that is sparked by what we see. So I've actually started with a box, and the box was a gift box that I kept. You could use again a tin lid, you could use a plastic tray covered in decorative paper. And I've used some of the succulents from the garden, although you can buy some very good artificial succulents. And what you're going to do is fill the base of the tray with your items, fir cones, the baubles, the succulents, and you can either balance these in or you can actually begin to glue them in. And you keep on adding and adding until you create something like this. Baubles, and I've taken some slightly taller baubles, fir cones, some of the artificial succulents. But actually what I have done is very carefully, before I made this design, I've cut holes in some of the baubles. Now that has to be done with a craft knife. Be very careful how you do it. And I did actually heat the knife slightly to cut the holes. You don't have to cut holes. Some of the baubles have apertures large enough to hold the flowers. And again, what I'm doing is using what I've got. And I had with me a cyclamen plant that I bought from the supermarket. And I had on the patio some hellebores, which I thought I would use. I've pre-filled all the baubles with water. Memo to self, check before you do the design that the baubles actually hold water. And so what I'm going to do is place the flowers in the individual baubles. Now, for some of you, probably cutting off the heads of the plants is absolutely awful, but the flowers will come up again from underneath. And sometimes it's just about being a little bit different, a little bit brave with our flowers. And at this time of the year, the hellebores are absolutely beautiful. Again, with the previous design I did, I'm keeping the taller flowers to the back, the smaller flowers to the front. And this sort of design would actually make a very lovely design for a mantelpiece, a low table, but it just allows you to see the beauty of the individual flowers. I think as flower arrangers, we absolutely adore the hellebores in all their different varieties as they come forth. And then you're slightly stuck as to how you arrange them. And this is one design that works beautifully. I'm using the cyclamen leaves as well. They have a very lovely visual pattern to them. The fact that some of them curl up as well give us an interesting visual texture that's so important. When you are doing a design like this, try and remember the ratio of the number of containers, the baubles that you prepare with holes in, against the number of baubles that are purely there for decorative purposes. You literally do not want a flower in every single bauble. The larger baubles, I'm going to be able to put a few more flowers and again, some of the lovely foliage to use. And if you're going to do a design like this, maybe look at slightly cheaper baubles that are softer. They are far easier to cut. I've also tucked down inside some smaller baubles with holes in, so I can recess the flowers right down low into the design. Hellebores, Christmas roses, and they're the sort of flower that when they come out in the garden, you think, yes, the seasons are definitely changing and winter is round the corner. So we have there an assortment of various very, very delicate flowers placed into the baubles. Carrying that theme onwards then, I took a wicker ring that I didn't make, it was a pre-bought one. I have done the same with this design. I've cut holes into the top of some of the baubles and they are glued all the way round the ring. What you have to remember is that if you have the ring lying flat on the table and you're gluing, that the apertures need to be facing the right way, and you learn by your mistakes. Otherwise you lift up and you find all the apertures are on the front, which is fine, except the water won't stay in them. I've kept this design without flowers. I've used jasmine, I've used skimmia, some heuchera leaves, some of the lovely textured hebe leaves, and there are some plain ivy leaves. And the idea is that you create this lovely foliage with that little element of sparkle underneath, taking the theme of the baubles down. And I've made sure some of them are disguised, a cascade of baubles hanging down like so. So let's move on to our final design. And this one is a good excuse to go out and have a jolly good walk. And what you want to do is to collect a whole selection of leaves. They need to be dried, and so you may well have to put them in front of a heater to dry. And as you go, try and make sure that you have leaves of different shapes and different varieties. You'll then want a stub wire. The length of it depends on the size of the design that you want to do, and it needs to be strong enough to support the weight of the leaves. And then you'll want a piece of log, and you can buy these slices of log on the internet, or if you have a wood burner, you spend 10 minutes going through the log pile, choosing what you want. I've chosen something with a flat top and base. You choose what's right for you, but just make sure that it sits happily. Nobody tells you when you start to become a flower arranger that you need muscles, ingenuity, and you need to think outside the box. I find a skewer held over the flame of a candle works wonders, but then hold a bit of tissue. Don't hold the skewer at the top because heat actually travels up the metal. And you make a hole into the center of the log. If the wood is fresh, that will be done easily. Or if you've got a Black & Decker drill, you do it the easy way. You put a little bit of glue on the bottom of your wire, and then you put that into the hole in the log, and you go away and make yourself a cup of tea while the glue sets. And then you thread the leaves onto the wire. I don't know if any of you can remember the old system that you used to buy a wooden base with a wire in it that you put your receipts and bills on in a shop. This is the same concept. What you're going to do is grade your leaves, smaller at the bottom, bigger at the top, because what you're going to be doing is to create a tree. So let me just move the plants, and then we'll be able to see properly what we're doing. Because what we want to do is to create a tree like so. And if big is too big, then we go to something a little smaller. And you thread the leaves on one at a time. Now with this one, you can see I've kept the stems of the leaves in place because then it gives a softness. If you look at any conifer tree that grows, the ends of the branches come out and they disappear into nothing. So the stems of the leaves act like so. And you rotate as you go. So I have a leaf with a stem there, a leaf with a stem there. What you're going to do is alternate how you put your leaves on. And of course, this replicates nature, where so many plants that grow in very closely packed environments, their leaves are actually rotated around the branch so that every leaf has its own amount of daylight. If it didn't, then the tree would suffer. Don't compact the leaves, leave little bits of space, and the natural curve of the leaf is actually creating that for you. So you can see that lovely rhythm that is created. Obviously, you would go up and up and up, and I'd be finishing with probably a few acer leaves or a few of the oak leaves right at the top. What I have then done at the top of the tree is I've cut out of silver birch bark a little star. I quite like the idea of keeping the whole theme of natural looking material. And then with some very, very small alder cones, I've glued alder cones into some of the gaps between the leaves. I finished it off and it made me cross-eyed and I had to lie down for hours after, and I'm only pulling your legs. You can buy table sprinkles, and I bought a pack of table sprinkles in the shape of stars, and I've actually glued them all the way round. So there is an element of sparkle. And then I went absolutely mad. I bought a small can of hair glitter spray. My disco days are over. I buy this purely for the aesthetic beauty of the material. But what you then do is spray with glitter spray it gives you that lovely feel of glitter without going OTT. And you can see that there is an element of movement to the design, and that is purely because the wire has that fluidity to it. And any tree in nature moves with the wind, and I think that gives a lovely feel. If you were really into strong colours, you could completely saturate this with gold or with silver, but it just has that little touch of sparkle to it. You could make a whole grouping of them and put in between it votive glasses with battery lights into it. And the final design, again, based on very much natural materials. Whilst I was going through the log pile for the slices of these, I came across some very lovely pieces of log. They're literally put on a tray with a sprinkling of baubles, a pin holder and a shallow dish in the middle, and I've got twigs and jasmine. And I discovered in my local co-op, when I went to get the bread, they're selling these very lovely conifer trees, and I've added those. So you could then make a very naturalistic design. I've put in a few of the green Prado carnations to just bring the colour out. But it's almost as if nature is growing up out of your design. So lots and lots of designs to whet your appetite. And I think at this time of the year, what we need to do is to go back to what we do, being creative. Being creative releases an awful lot of pleasure for us, whether it's in the fact that we've done the designs or whether it's in the viewer. A knock on the door, leave a little tree for a neighbour. They open the door, you've gone, you've disappeared into the mists, but you've left a little gift for them. And I think at this time, more than any, we just need to think about the simplicity of what we're doing, and simplicity can bring so much pleasure. For those of you that know me terribly well, and this is very strange because normally I know who I'm speaking to, but I'm sure there are some of you out there that know me terribly well. So a hello from me to you. But you know my love of quotes, and it wouldn't be me if I didn't finish without a quote. And this is from a lovely Victorian Christmas card, and it says this: "May you have the gladness of Christmas, which is hope. May you find the spirit of Christmas, which is peace. But above all, may you find and keep the heart of Christmas, which is indeed love." And I think, if we're talking about love, we need to finish with a round of applause for all the people out there in the world that are working so hard to keep us safe. A round of applause for everybody. Bye-bye.
Katherine, thank you so much. That was lovely, and what a perfect note to end on. And I also love the idea of baking a little tree and just leaving it on your neighbour's doorstep.
It's so simple, yeah.
It's a lovely idea. And I mean, I don't know about everyone else watching, but I am full of ideas, and I'm going to go off into the woods right now and find myself some leaves. Thank you so much, and thank you all for watching. And don't forget, you can watch again. That's the beauty of this format. So you can watch as many times to get the displays right. Thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Bye everyone.
Bye.